Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's interview. My name is Sharon Lai and I'll be your interviewer for today. We have the pleasure of hosting two distinguished guests today, Mr. John M. Green, an accomplished author and the board chair of University of Wollongong Global Enterprises, as well as the chairman and co-founder of the independent book publisher Pandora Press. Joining Mr. Green is Mr. Milad, a renowned journalist who works for Millennial, and he also an alumnus of University of Wollongong, having graduated in 2014. Thank you both of you joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. So to start our conversation, as a person who writes a lot, despite both of you came from a very different background, using the beauty of words to express your thoughts. So whether writing crime thriller or reporting news, so how do you choose the topics to cover or write about your materials? Any tips to narrow down your topics or ways to get the inspirations?
Please, go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
All right. Well, in writing fiction, it's a little bit hit and miss. And I'll give you some examples.
Okay.
So I wrote a story about North Korea threatening to destroy the grid, the electricity grid in America, by putting a small nuclear weapon on a satellite.
Okay.
And I got that idea because I was chairing the risk committee of an insurance company that I was deputy chairman of. And once a year we sit around talking about emerging risks, and they put up this risk that I'd never heard of before, which was EMP, which stood for electromagnetic pulse. And I said, what's that? And they said, well, it's like a solar flare, and you can actually have a man-made one where a nuclear weapon blows up and sends out gamma rays, which fry everything that's electrical or electronic. And I'd never heard of that. And I thought, this could be a good novel. So, it's opportunistic. My last book was about a very famous art heist. So in 1990, thieves broke into a very important museum in Boston, and they stole 13 works of art, which today would be valued at around $1 billion American, and they've never been found, those works. So there's Rembrandt's, Vermeer, Degas, and I went to that gallery about 20 years ago, and I always wondered whatever happened to the art. And then during the COVID period, I was thinking about it, and I thought, I'll write a novel about it where my hero finds the art. So it kind of just comes to you from different sources.
So you basically blend in your own experiences and also adding up your imaginations.
Right.
Okay. How about Mr. Milad?
All right. So for journalists, it's slightly different. We mostly focus on current issues, current affairs. So hence, we have to be constantly informed about what's going on out there. In terms of the story angles, the topics that we choose, it's either selected by the editorial team, the editors, and passed down to yes, you can call it that, passed down to the reporters, or we pitch to the editors that, okay, I want to work on this topic, this issue, and then once you get the green light, and there you go, you'll start looking for potential angles and getting the necessary information. So for us, our imaginations doesn't really come to play. It's mostly on reporting facts and based on the journalistic integrity and ethics. So it's very much on fact-checking, verifying the source of information, the information before we can actually disseminate it out to the public. So it requires us to read a lot and understand the current issues. So in order for you to write, you need information, you need to read a lot before you can actually produce any content. So that's the basic rule of journalism, and that's how it works.
All right, understood. So I have a question. I wonder how you define whether a story and news is actually like newsworthy.
All right. So again, it comes down to how much we read and how well versed we are with the current issues.
Yes.
I'm sure you've heard of the recent issue over the LGBT on the watch. So this becomes a current issue that needs to be, written about, explored, and that's by us understanding the topic and exploring potential angles that has not been reported, or if it's of public interest, and if it is, then we explore and write on it.
And can I ask a question too? So sometimes a topic is obviously interesting to the public, but often the public doesn't know enough about it. So you get the investigative
That's right.
journalist who comes up with an issue that they track down and so on. So how do you kind of work out, I want to know about that, I think there is something there, because there would be a lot of topics. It's a bit like me trying to come up with a story for a novel. You've got to find something that you think that's important, I'm going to follow that.
Okay, it also comes down to the reporter, the journalist, whether if that journalist is interested in such a topic and goes on its own to explore and see whether if there's a potential story to write about that, and comes back to pitch to the editor. So again, it goes back to being well-versed about not only the particular topic that you like, but other current issues that's happening. You have to be constantly on your toes, understanding what's happening out there to find different angles. Like last year, I did a documentary and a lengthy story on the issues surrounding Chowkit. Chowkit is a district that's often kind of it's being linked to sex workers and drug use. So there are multiple social issues happening around that. So I did some research to see what has been done over the past 20 years and where are they now. So that's kind of an investigative where you go out in the field and see what are the issues and then try to get some stories out from the community there, investigate and verify the sources and see whether if it's true or not, and then establish your story or documentary or where you're working on.
Yes, it's very important to informing the current issues to the audiences, despite of what topics is really trending right now. So also due to the advancement of technology, we all rely on the internet throughout our daily life. So I wonder that how has the internet affected the way you report and write?
Well, the internet has been a fabulous resource for me as a writer. So a lot of what I write, I love to get into lots of detail and lots of facts, because the more you can create a fictional story with reality infused in it,
Yes.
the more realistic it is for the reader. And so in the olden days, before the internet, I would have to go to a library and I would have to get the
It's
books.
a long process.
It's a long process, and you probably didn't do it as much. And so now I can quickly find out something that I need to know and put that in the story. Often though, you end up doing the old go down the rabbit hole where you start here and you end up over here. But often you find something that was much more interesting than what you started off with. So I find it very, very valuable from that point of view for research.
Understood. So, yeah, Mr. John Green has been through all the process of finding the materials to refer in order to make the story logical to the audience. Because if your story is not logic at all, people will feel like it's too fake. I can't relate it into my real life.
Right.
So yeah, with the shortcuts of internet, you can just search everything within your fingertips. So for Mr. Milad, how the internet had let's say enhance your work as a journalist.
Yeah, as what John mentioned just now, it's very valuable when it comes to doing research. I mean, you can just be this bound and with a few keywords, and then it leads you to hundreds and thousands of sources that you can look up. But as much as it offers a lot of values, it also has its own challenges of fake information or misinformation, where sometimes you may find a source which is not reliable. So that comes down to how you actually narrow down and fact check to ensure that what you're picking up from the internet, the search engine, other websites are reliable and true in order for you to report. Because for my line of work, especially journalism, we cannot afford to have an unreliable source and publish, because the minute you do that, it opens up the door for defamations or all sorts of other issues which we always want to avoid. So that's one of the biggest challenges. But yes, by all means, it has been very helpful. If it wasn't because of the internet, I think our media landscape today would have been totally different. What I believe is that the internet, the dot-com era, really revolutionized industries. But when the social media came to the picture, it revolutionized the content industry, which is no longer limited to media houses, production houses, or publishers. Now, in the current social media world, anybody can become a content creator.
Yes.
And you've got a wide variety of content out there, from very reliable contents, serious topics, researchers, and entertainment, all the way to even obscene and radical content. So it has been like that conventionally as well, but what has changed now is the accessibility and the shareability. It's more accessible and it's easily shareable. You've got platforms like WhatsApp, social media, that you easily can share any sorts of information, to some extent we can say without border. So that has become a big challenge for I think writers and content producers.
I mean, just taking up that point about borders, another positive from it that I've found as a writer, and I imagine you would also have as a journalist, is that when I'm doing my research and I need to talk to people, it's really easy because we can now Zoom with people, and people are much more willing to have a quick chat about something. I don't have to, particularly if they're in another city or another country, I don't have to travel there. We can just do something at a time that suits. And I've actually got my expert where I've been worrying about a particular topic to talk to me and fine tune what I need to have. Similarly, you would have with interview subjects.
Certainly, yes.
It's a big boon from that point of view. I was interesting, a few weeks ago, I read an article in the New York Times by the economist Paul Krugman, and he was saying that all the economic evidence is that the internet did not improve productivity in the world, which seems intuitively wrong to me. But he gave all of this evidence. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who is a futurist, and I mentioned this to him, and he said he was right until 2020. Mm-hmm. And I said, what do you mean? What happened then? He said, don't you remember COVID, the pandemic? Yes. And he said, all of a sudden, all of the resources that we had available, all of the tools that the internet enabled, like Zoom and everything else, instantly were used, and we all went online.
That's a shift.
A shift, dramatic shift, which without the internet we could never have done. Yes. So universities couldn't have
Contact
been
classes.
doing classes,
Yes.
people couldn't have continued in their jobs.
Work from home.
Exactly. So it did revolutionize, but we only really used it from the time of the pandemic in a big way. So it's kind of interesting.
Because we were forced to do that.
We were forced.
Otherwise, I think, I don't know what would have happened to all these industries if
Right.
we didn't have
Yeah.
access to all
Right.
these resources.
So we were kind of pregnant with all of this technology, and we weren't using it in a efficient, productive way, and now we are. So while the pandemic was a terrible thing, it did have a positive side effect.
Yeah, that's a bright side. So for me as a student, just what we discussed about that, the word productivity. With the internet, we can access to the artificial intelligence with the born of ChatGPT. It's easier for me as a student to, just search for any topics, and then there's a whole paragraph over there, and I just copy, paste, paraphrase, submit. Yeah, that's a very new thing for the student nowadays. So, what techniques do you think that you need to adapt in order to guarantee the originality of your work? As what we discussed just now, we are bombarded with all the informations and also with the help of artificial intelligence, the transmedia digital world.
So I think artificial intelligence, we're kind of in a position right now with artificial intelligence, I think, where we are like on a pendulum and we're oscillating between, wow, this is really incredible, to holy moly, I'm going to die, right? Because there's a lot of fear around what happens if artificial intelligence takes over, etc.
Yes.
And there's rational fear from people who were involved in starting it up, like this fellow George Hinton from Google, who's resigned recently and said, I'm really worried about the existential risk that is coming from artificial intelligence. But if we leave that and we talk about how, you were saying a moment ago, Sherry, that, you could use it as a student, the most important thing is thinking about what are the parameters in which you're using it. So how do you know that what it's telling you is, coming back to what Milad was saying earlier on, is true? What are the facts? Because artificial intelligence is notoriously wrong. And why is it wrong? Because of the way it's been trained. So it's been trained on the internet. And what we know about the internet is, as again Milad was saying, there's a lot there that's wrong. There's misinformation, there's bias, there's prejudice, there's all sorts of things there which, as sophisticated student or business people or journalists or whatever, we're kind of used to checking the facts and so on. But when a ChatGPT just gives you an answer, you don't know whether it's giving you the truth or it's biased. So I'll give you an example. I asked ChatGPT recently, please tell me about the fictional character Tori Swift. Now, she is a character I created, so I know everything about her, right?
You're the Lord.
All right. So I know exactly everything about her. So it came back within milliseconds with, quite a lot of detail about her. And half of it was absolutely right, and half of it was absolutely wrong. So I said back to GPT, you're wrong about this. And it said, I'm very sorry, but I'm an AI model and I'm trained on that. Here's the correct answer. And it was wrong again. So I said, you're still wrong. And we did this about 10 times and I gave up. So he didn't know. I said, what are your sources for this information? It says, I don't know what my sources are. And, so as a student, as a writer, as a businessman, as a journalist, we need to get back to the sources. We need to verify. So it's a great tool, but like every tool, you have to learn how to use it. And I think one of the obligations of universities, and we are discussing that here at UOW, Malaysia, and we're discussing it a couple of weeks ago in our Dubai campus and in our Hong Kong campus, is equipping students to use the new technology in productive ways, to be aware of what its limitations are, but also what its positive aspects are. To me, that's very important.
Yeah.
I think how you put it, you really correctly put everything together and explained it how, about the limitations and the issues. Exactly, those are the problems that we might face. Well, AI and chat GPT is still fairly new to judge, and anything that's being introduced, of course, they have a lot of flaws at the beginning and needs to be corrected in the long run. Just like any other technology, I think this definitely has a lot of limitations as well, which needs to be corrected. And the major one is this misinformation needs to be avoided, because just imagine if you're doing it at a very broad scale and you're constantly reproducing misinformation and disseminating it to the public at large, what would happen? I mean, that would affect people's literacy, that would affect how you make decisions. You don't make any informed decisions anymore because the information that you're consuming, the information that you're relying on is based on misinformation. And it would put it into a very vicious cycle that you cannot find an exit out of this. Just like the internet, I think AI also needs to be fine-tuned before it's introduced to be practiced at a much larger scale. AI is great, but it has to be targeted. The targeted industries with the framework they need to establish a framework, a border to what extent you can use AI. I think that's when it becomes effective to the public. Otherwise, it's a big challenge, and it may even turn into a threat moving forward if all these questions and concerns are not addressed correctly.
And I think it's already being used as a threat. So bad guys are jumping into AI already. So we've had cases recently where, for example, you can have not just text AI, you can have sound AI, you can have art AI, and so on, right? And so now if somebody rings your telephone, your mobile phone, and you answer and you say, "Hi, it's Cherie," and they say, "Oh, I'm from the tax office and you are late with your tax return," and you say, "Oh, no, this must be a scam call," and you hang up. If they have 3 seconds of your voice, they can now turn that into a conversation in your own voice.
Yes.
And so what we've had in the last few weeks is people, children ringing up their parents. It's when I say children in inverted commas, but it's an AI version of the children's voice, ringing the parents and saying, "Hey, Mum, I've lost my wallet. Can you, I'm in another country. Can you wire me some money?" And they did, right? But that's using AI.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of bad things that will come out of it, which again means that we need a lot more education for everybody about what's happening, how can we be aware of the limitations, the risks, the dangers, as well as the good things.
Yes, although like AI is kind of so like threatened for us, but I think that it's actually a very good tool for us. It depends on how we use it. So the very important skills that we need to sharpen out is actually critical thinking.
That's it.
Yeah.
100%.
Yes, and also just like what Mr. Milad has mentioned, everyone can become a blogger with a very low cost in this very, in this industry that everyone can access to the internet. But yeah, boundaries always need to be set when we are sharing our thoughts on the internet, respecting the multicultural and also the extra cautious when we touching political issues. So as a writer and journalist, so what have some of the most challenging moral conundrums that you have ever encountered?
Back to you.
Look, the moral, I think it comes back to truth.
Truth.
I think it comes back to decency. There's a lot of people who, when you give them a keyboard and access to social media,
Mhm.
they become different people.
Keyboard warrior.
Keyboard warriors. And they will write things that they would never say to somebody sitting next to them. They can be really, really rude and
Rude and
offensive and mean and horrible and threatening. And ordinarily, if you know those people, you say it's actually a decent person. So why are they doing that? And I think we all need to have a little bit of self-restraint when it comes to using these media. And part of I think, the anonymity that people feel, even though if they're using their own name sometimes or not, it's facilitated a kind of a, what do they call it, a echo chamber of hate out there.
Yes.
And it's really very unhealthy for society. And I believe, rightly or wrongly, that it's led to a lot more polarization of opinion rather than bringing people together. You know, when the internet started and social media started, it was all about bringing people
unite.
together and so on. And I think it's had some of that, but it's also had a lot of the opposite effect, and people really being quite horrible.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And especially when it comes to the term blogger, I think that's a very yesterday term. It's kind of old-fashioned because now this group of people are identified as content creators. You've got a variety of contents. And who would have thought 10 years ago that today you can just place a camera in front of you, record yourself munching on food, and attract millions. Yes, that's the term that they use. Attract millions of followers, millions of views. So the definition of content has kind of changed, and anybody today can become a content creator. You can just document your own lifestyle, and if you do it consistently with some thoughts into it, you have the potential to attract
KOL.
millions.
Key
Millions
opinion
of
leaders.
followers.
Key opinion leaders.
Mm.
Yeah.
There are multiple
Influencers.
terms to describe this group of people. One is key opinion leaders, content creators, influencers. Yes, there are multiple terms, but it all comes down to ethics, to having, again, framework and borderline to understand the content that you are producing and putting it out there. What are the outcomes? Would it trigger hate? Would it trigger? Would it provoke thoughts? What's the purpose? Because what we see now is a lot of copycats. Just because something becomes a trend, some others would just sow the line and quickly want to follow that and gain attention. But it may work to your advantage, but what would be the purpose in the long run? What would you want to achieve, and what purpose you want to pursue when it comes to creating such content? So I think that's very important when it comes to content creators and the industry as a whole, because, as I said, this industry is no longer limited to publishers or TV networks or the media, but anybody can now become a content creator for this content and put it out there.
And there's a thing about the incentives. So we saw it at the beginning of ebooks. When ebooks first came in, people said, "Oh, self-publishing is the way to go," and you would get examples of somebody who published millions of copies of a book, and everyone started self-publishing. But what they didn't realize was that there's an entire curation process involved in publishing a book that if you're self-publishing, you don't have. You don't have the benefit of editorial assistance. You don't have the benefit of a marketing team, a design team, and all of these things. And so people see the shiny star of the person who sold 1 million copies, or they look at TikTok and they see influencers who've got 5 million followers, and they say, "That's going to be me." But actually, it's not going to be them, probably, there are few, I mean, there's more there, but there's not hundreds of thousands of people with massive followings who make a lot of money through their advertising links and so on. So I think, you need to be quite thoughtful about whether or not you're going to devote your life to becoming a thought leader or an opinion leader, an influencer on these platforms, because it may be that you won't get the kind of followers you need to make a living, if that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, understood. As what we discussed about the modern terms, for example, like the content creators. So this is a generation where youngsters, the one who controlling the world. So youngsters are actually preaching about the idea of quiet quitting. Basically is meaning that you do nothing in your life. So what are your words of wisdom that keeping you to produce more things? Motivational quotes perhaps to share out to those aspiring artists and journalists out there.
Yeah, and I'd never heard of quiet quitting until today. And it troubles me as a term that people say, well, there's just too much work, I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. You say, well, the world can't work that way. I mean, it might work for the individual. I don't know how long it would work for the individual, because if they're lucky enough that someone is paying for their rent and paying for their food, you can get away with it. But most of us have to actually make a living to survive and pay our own bills. So I think it's very defeatist. That's my opinion. And many people, I would say, find the thing that really excites you. If the job that you have at the moment doesn't interest you, then you're probably in the wrong job. So I wouldn't be kind of just sitting back and drinking soda water or whatever it is you drink. I'd be out looking for something that would really pique my interest, get me excited, make me want to go to work rather than to quit.
Yeah.
And there's many things you can do, and you don't have to do the same thing for your whole life. I started off as a lawyer. I did that for a long time. I then became an investment banker. I did that for a long time. Now I'm a writer and I'm on a few company boards and I'm involved with the university. There's so many different things out there that you can do. And these days, people can do more than one thing at the same time.
Multitask.
And that's also good if you can. So I would encourage people to find the things that they're really interested in rather than giving up.
Yes, life is about a journey for you to explore yourself. How about Mr. Milad?
Well, I personally don't believe in a shortcut to success, because it takes time. Some people, they find success as a destination, but it literally is the journey, regardless what industry you're working in, or whether you are switching industries, but you're still making progress. Whether if you, just what you mentioned just now, if you don't find yourself fit in that, in the job that you are doing at the moment, find an alternative switch, but don't just quit, because somebody still needs to pay your bills. And when I come here, I sometimes come to talk to the students. I engage with them, and when they ask about the industry, I always tell them, what you're doing in the university now, your tertiary education, you're basically just building the foundation of your career. If you look at your career as a building, you're just building the foundation, and the rest is up to you when you go out there. And this building can turn into a skyscraper. The sky is the limit for you. It really depends on how far you want to go. And that's really it really depends on you, whether how determined you are. You find the right path, you're interested in that path, how you keep yourself motivated in that path. Because, of course, working may not be fun all the time. You will find obstacles, challenges, but how you manage them and how you find a way to navigate your journey.
Everyone has their own time, so just never give up. Yeah, I really enjoyed having conversation with both of you. because it brings out very insightful, very excellent insights. So thank you, Mr. Green and Mr. Milad again. So yeah, thank you for joining for us. We appreciate your time and wish you continue your success in your room. Thank you to those watching our videos. Make sure to follow our Instagram, Voicelah. So yeah, there's more content. Remember to explore it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.